Haha, I told you guys I'd mess it up. 3 days of releases and then 2 months of nothing. Pretty typical Kudo. I could just throw out a list of excuses, but I'm pretty sure I've used them all by now, so let's just get straight to the content. I'm actually pretty baffled I haven't hit the Attack on Titan set yet. It's special because it was the first set that at least I can remember that came out in English before it came out in Japanese. Which, for the record, as I'm recording this, now realize I am an idiot for going through and painstakingly translating all the cards that I'm using when I could have just used the English versions. They would have looked better and they would have been readable and it would have saved me a lot of work. But you know what? We're just gonna go with it. I already put so much time into translating them. For those of you who don't know how this works, I'm going to look at the top 4 cards from each color that I found the most interesting, which will give us about 16 cards altogether. I will look at some cards as pairs, like if there are more than one card that goes part of a set, or a combo, or a strategy, then I'll look at all of them at once and just count that as one. And the cards I'll be looking at aren't necessarily going to be just the strongest cards in the set. They're going to be the cards that I think are the most interesting or the most defining in the set. I'm just going to stick to these 16 cards, but if for some reason you would like a part 2 to this video where I look at 16 more cards, please leave it a like, and if I see this hits 100 likes, then I will make a part 2. Unless I forget. So let's get started. Starting us off in yellow is going to be a level 1 Armin. Wait, hold on a second. That's not what Armin looks like. Haven't they even seen the movie? Come on, guys. So starting us off in yellow is going to be a level 1 Armin Cleared Future. I wanted to start with this card because it introduces what I think is the most unique and interesting part of the set, and that is very fluid movement between your characters on stage. This is mainly in yellow and green, although I think red can do it a little bit too. When this attacks, if its climax is in play, you can play 1 stock, and if you do, this becomes a 7,000, and until the end of your opponent's next turn, at the start of your opponent's attack phase, you can take this and switch it with one of your core characters. You can also stand them, but that doesn't really do much unless maybe you're fighting a Persona deck or something and you completely screw with Yukiko decks, I guess. But overall, the part that's important is the fact that this can switch places with another character. Now, I'll probably have to get confirmation on this, but from the way this is worded, it also keeps the plus 2,000 power boost to stay at 7,000 power. This can really mess with your opponent, and for 1 stock, it's pretty darn good. Let's say, for instance, you have this and something weaker like a level 0 that's still in play, and your opponent is planning to attack the level 0, destroy it, and then just maybe side attack something into this, or, whatever their strategy might be. Their plan is to get rid of one of your weaker characters. Well, beginning of your opponent's attack phase, which is too late for them to start switching around their characters, mind you, you take this, you switch them, and all of a sudden, booyah, your opponent's strategy is just completely gone. They have to figure out something else. They can still attack into this if they want to, but if you play this correctly and put this in front of something that your opponent can't beat, then there's nothing they can do about it. It's their turn, so they're not going to back up. They're either going to side attack or they're going to suicide off their character. Armin himself might not be the absolute best card for this, but I think it's pretty decent in kind of encapsulating what the set is capable of, and that is fluid movement and messing with your opponent's plans. Next card I want to look at is 104th Training Corps' Annie. This is a level 2 that costs 2 stock, so it swings for 2 soul damage. During your turn, it's an 8,500. It's a 7,500 during your opponent's turn, so stat-wise, it's not that good, but you can pay 1 and discard a card from your hand when this attacks, and you get plus 500 power to all of your characters and plus 1 soul for the turn. Something that just straight up gives you 3 more damage without having to use some kind of climax combo is obviously worth looking at. A lot of people aren't going to necessarily jump at this card because it's only a 7,500 and 8,500 during your turn, still not that good, goes up to 9,000. I mean, it's okay, but it's outshined a lot by a lot of other options that we have. But I think it's a really interesting strategy, and one of the things that makes it even more interesting is the fact that we are running the Attack on Titan set, so we have, as you guessed it, fluid movement. Let's say, for instance, your opponent happened to level you up to level 2 and they're still on level 1. You play this card, you play a couple of other cards, one of them being maybe the Armin we just looked at, and when you attack with all of them during your opponent's turn, if they have leveled up to level 2 and they start playing their big 9000s, so on and so forth, whatever, then you can kind of play around with this a little bit. Like, you could have Arwen and Annie push each other out of the way, so that maybe if your opponent is planning on attacking into Annie, and then maybe attacking Arwen with something weaker, you could have them switch, so that you can save Annie and let Arwen die. I don't know, there's just a lot of interesting things that I want to see come out of this set, using the idea of moving your characters around. And I think having a character that can potentially give you so much extra damage per turn is going to be vital to that strategy. These last couple of things we're going to look at are the Iron Titans. The Iron Titans are the most powerful thing in yellow, hands down. There's nothing better. As cool as the whole movement thing is, the fact that the Iron Titans are a thing is just pretty much outshines everything else, because the Iron Titans are just such good cards. We're going to start with this level 1. If you attack with another core characters, this gets plus 1000 power, so this can potentially be an 8000, which is pretty good for level 1. Its main effect, though, is its climax combo, which I think is really beautiful. So by paying 1 and clocking yourself for 1 damage when you attack with this card's climax out, this first gets a 3500 power boost, which, dang, okay, without any sort of boosts whatsoever, including from its own effect, this goes up to a natural 9500. Wowzers. That's not the important part, though. Your opponent cannot use Encore, and that includes the paying 3 to revive a character Encore. Right now, getting rid of Encore at level 1 is huge. It's great. It's amazing. So the fact that we have a card that just straight up gets rid of it, it's not even just for the character that it's reversing, and it will reverse a character. It's just your opponent straight up cannot use it until the next time they end their turn. Just straight up locking your opponent out of stalling behind Encore characters is a huge, huge deal. What's great about this is this card isn't even really that bad on level 2. Let's say, hypothetically, you are attacking at level 2 for the 9500, but instead of just going straight for the 9500, you attack with your other 2 characters first to reverse a couple of characters, and then you attack with this going up to 11500, and during the Encore step, your opponent just has to discard all of their characters, okay? 11500 will reverse some things, especially if you've got decent assist in your back row. Honestly, it's a single climax combo that locks out like 30 to 40% of decks being played right now. The last card, or cards, we will be looking at are Key to Mankind's Counterattack Aaron and Steeled Will Aaron Titan. So let's start with Key to Mankind's Counterattack. It's really simple. When you play its climax, you can pay 1 stock, send this to memory, and put your big, beefy Steeled Will Aaron Titan in the spot that this was in. There's really not much to say here. 1 stock is definitely worth it for what you're getting, and you're compressing your deck by sending cards to memory so that when you deck refresh, this isn't in your waiting room, yada 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 yada. So let's look at this Titan. Recollection, if it's your turn and you actually use this card's effect to put Key to Mankind's Counterattack in the memory, then this card gains plus 1500 power to go up to 13,500, which is pretty darn beefy, and when the battle opponent of this becomes reversed, you can send that character to memory. This whole being able to send characters to memory thing is pretty cool. It's optional, which is good, so if your opponent's using something like some kind of Encore or something really cheesy, you can just get rid of it, but I wouldn't be relying on this a whole lot. This is something of a beginner's trap. People think that sending cards to memory is really, really, really good, because it means it just straight up gets rid of it, and it feels really good to just take that card out of play. But what a lot of people don't realize is if you have to do this 2 or 3 times, then you're going to actually start thinning your opponent's deck and making it harder for you to climax cancel if you happen to deck refresh. And keep in mind, the entire strategy relies around getting this card out at level 2. I can understand at level 3 maybe just sending a bunch of stuff to memory because you don't care, because there probably won't be another deck refresh, but level 2, there's a very high chance that at least 1 deck refresh will happen, and if you're getting rid of all of your potential damage by sending it to the memory, and your opponent deck refreshes, then the only one who really suffers is you. Keep in mind that every time you get rid of 5 cards, it's roughly the same as having 1 more climax in your deck. it's a all mathematical thing. You can watch my other videos for that. Let's move on to its other effects. So when this is placed from hand to stage, that can be either through Aaron's effect or just by playing it from your hand. You can search your deck for one core character, reveal it, put it in your hand, and shuffle your deck. So this lets you search your deck for climaxes to see how many you have left. You can look through your deck for a core character, put it in your hand. It can be any level. This is all around good. You can also put one more card in your hand to replace this card. You're keeping up hand advantage. You can get rid of another character for character discard encore. Everything about this effect is great. Wowie kazowie, this card sure does sound great. Now let's look at its final effect. So at the start of your encore step, you have to pay 1 stock, and if you don't, this goes to memory, and your key to Mankind's Counterattack comes back in play. So, wow. This pretty much means that when you play this card, you have to be ready for it to not generate you any more stock. You gain 1 stock from attacking, you pay that 1 stock when you attack with it, and go to the encore step. You do not want this effect to go off. That is really bad, because once this card goes to memory, it's not coming back, okay? Key to Mankind's Counterattack is coming back all the time if you can't pay for the effect, but you don't want that. And you might be thinking, oh, well, that's fine, because, you know, I'm still putting another card in memory, I'm still thinning out my deck. No, it's really bad, because since you're taking 1 card out of the memory in order to do this, you're not actually gaining anything, and your 7500 Aaron is going to die during your opponent's next turn. And even though you got that 1 more stock to pay for its encore, you're not going to want to. So there you have it. It's a very powerful card, but keep in mind when you play it, especially if you have a full row of 3 of these, you're not going to be regenerating your stock. You're going to have to deal with whatever stock you had when you played this for the rest of the game. Highly don't recommend playing all 3 of them at once. Okay, let's look at some red. 104th Training Course John. When your other character becomes reversed in battle, this gains plus 2,000 for the turn. So this goes up to 9,000. 9,000 is pretty decent. If you're running some kind of strategy where you can very easily just suicide off a character to get this to 9,000, that's great. Or you could be super dumb and suicide 2 characters off, get this up to 11,000, but I digress. Let's move on. You can pay 1, and this card gains plus 1,000 power, and the following ability. When the battle opponent of this becomes reversed, you can put that character on top of the deck. Okay, so let's play around with this a little bit. Let's say, for example, you have this card, a 9,000 vanilla, and like a dumb level 0 or something. So you pay 1 to give this plus 1,000 power to put it up to 8,000. You then suicide off your level 0, that doesn't matter. This becomes a 10,000 for the turn. You attack, you reverse a character, you put it on top of the deck. When you attack with your 9,000, it's guaranteed at least one of them is going to be damage. This will require some playing around, but I think this is a really good card, especially since there's not really a limit to how many times you can pay the 1 to get the 1,000 boost. 1 for 1,000 is not good, in fact it's really bad, but if you really needed to, you could pay like 3 or 4 stock to just get this up to 11,000 and just straight up start knocking some stuff out. This is another way to get rid of your opponent's cards with Encore, but it's nowhere near as effective as the other Titan. I'm sorry guys, red doesn't have too many amazing cards in it, but we're going to look at Goddess of Healing Krista because it's got some potential. If you can use this to attack an open spot, it has a really neat support ability. You can pay 1 and put this in the waiting room, and one of your other characters is frontal attacked. You can pay this cost, which is paying 1 and putting it in the waiting room, to give it plus 2,500 power, which is decent. Let's say that you have this in your hand and you can use it to attack an open spot. So you do. When your opponent is getting their field ready, they have to keep in the back of their mind that you can sacrifice this card off to give another character plus 2,500 power, and you can do it when the frontal attack is declared, so it's not like they can outsmart you through it. So they have to kind of plan around that. 2,500 is kind of beefy, and the great thing about it is if this card becomes reversed, you can still use this effect. Like, it's still in play, it still has all of its abilities. You can just sack it off, give a character plus 2,500 power, and it's just something that your opponent has to play around. It's not amazing, but I could see some red decks maybe running this at like 2-ish, because it's just another thing for your opponent to think about, and that's always good. Okay guys, okay, I know, y'all are going crazy because I haven't looked at Micasa yet. So here we're going to look at the level 3. If you have 2 or more other core characters, this gains plus 2,000 power. If you're playing the deck anywhere near correctly, you're going to at least have 2 in the back row, so this might as well just always be an 11,000. It's got a healing ability. It's also a change target, but I'm not going to look at the changer because I think the changer's kind of bad. And finally, its last effect. At the start of your opponent's attack phase, you can pay 1 stock. If so, choose one of your core characters and this, stand them, and switch them. My oh my, how it all comes back. So this kind of just adds to the whole fluid movement thing. If you are using the Armin, then you understand why something like this would be good. You can do this at the beginning of your opponent's attack phase, and if your opponent's not ready to attack into an 11,000, then you completely screw with them, because they either have to side attack or they have to suicide off the character that they thought was actually going to accomplish something. One other thing that I want to point out about this card, I know I said I wasn't going to look at the changer because I don't think the changer's that good, but one thing that the changer does accomplish very well is getting this out at level 2. Yeah, if you start doing this at level 2, the whole switchy thing, you are completely going to screw with your opponent's minds, because there's not a whole lot at level 2 that can take out a straight 11,000, especially if you have good assist. Bringing this right around back to Goddess of Healing, let's say you're running Goddess of Healing and this in the same deck. You play Goddess of Healing, you attack an open spot, and you play this card. During your opponent's next turn, they put something in front of Goddess of Healing because they plan on taking it out, and you just totally play the switch on them. All of a sudden, your Goddess of Healing is in a completely different spot, so you could potentially have it in an open spot if this reversed a character during your last turn, and keep it safe. And then if your opponent does decide to attack into this, you can give it the plus 2,500 boost if you really need it. This is going to be a very, very skill-based deck, I feel. Finally, we're going to look at Battle Stance Micasa and Other Side of the Walls Micasa. So, Battle Stance Micasa is a level 1. When this is placed from hand to stage, it gets plus 1 level and plus 1,000 power for the 1 turn that it's out, which is useless. This is a garbage ability. Let's just ignore it and move on. So when this is front attacked, you can pay 2 and put this in the waiting room, and if you do, you can put Other Side of the Walls Micasa in play where this card used to be. Now, I've looked at a card almost exactly like this in Shining Force. In fact, I think I've looked at it at least a couple of times, but I'm going to keep looking at it because this is one of my favorite mechanics in the game. This just puts your opponent under so much pressure. This is only a 4,000. There's no reason your opponent shouldn't be able to take out a 4,000 during level 1. Heck, those garbage 5,500 vanillas can take out a 4,000. But when your opponent plays something to attack into this, they have to think to themselves, oh, wait a second. So if I attack into this and my opponent has 2 stock, they can potentially put a level 2 in play. So what do I want to do about this? I can just side attack and let that card keep chipping away at me, or I can take the risk that maybe they don't have it in their hand, or maybe I can deal with it and just let them get the change off. There are just so many little tricks around this card. One of the other really cool things is if your opponent maybe realizes this is going to happen but doesn't actually know what Other Side of the Walls Micasa is, then they have no idea that attacking into this actually lets you get an 8,000 that can potentially be a 10,000 because it gets plus 500 for each of your other core characters. That can potentially deal extra damage if you happen to play its climax. This is a really messy card to have to deal with at level 1. All the mind games, all day, and it's really a win-win situation for you. Either this card stays alive forever and continuously generates you stock and damage, or it goes to the waiting room and becomes a 10,000 that your opponent has to deal with. And let's say hypothetically that your level 2 comes around and you have to just play your Other Side of the Walls Micasa as a straight level 2. It's still a great card. It's still a 10,000 that swings for 2 soul damage, and its only downside is the fact that it cannot side attack. Which, oh no guys, oh no. I guess our entire strategy's ruined. Our 10,000 that swings for 2 soul damage can't side attack. Okay, I'm going to be straight with you guys. Green is my favorite color in this set, and this is the only non-Levy card we're going to be looking at. I'm not even that big a fan of Levy, but they just made Levy amazing. But enough of that. Alright, let's look at Han Gay. Pretty sure her name's Hans, but whatever. Discard a card from your hand to the waiting room. This gains plus 2,500 power for the turn. A lot of people aren't going to really realize why I put a card like this in here, but I just think the potential is really good, especially if you're going to be mirror matching against other Attack on Titan decks. It's just really powerful to be able to drop a 1 that doesn't cost any stock and potentially get it up over any card on the field. I'm not necessarily saying it's a strategy that you absolutely want to rely on, but hypothetically, if you get rid of like 3 cards from your hand, this becomes a 12,500, which deals with a lot of stuff that's really important in the metagame right now. If you are not fighting against a deck that relies on Encore and relies on pure power, then you can pretty much guarantee a kill or 3 stock off of a character, and I just think that's really good. Moving on. Okay. So the first levy we're going to look at is this level 2, but if you have 4 or more core characters in play, this gets -1 level in your hand, so you can play it on level 1. If all of your characters are core characters, this gets plus 1000 power, which if you have 4 or more of the core characters in play, then all of your characters are going to be core, I almost guarantee it. So it's a level 1 8000, which is pretty good, and during battles involving this card, no player may play backup cards. This isn't so much a problem for you, but it can be a problem for your opponent if they're having to deal with an 8000 at level 1. Do you think this levy's sounding pretty good? You don't know the half of it. This is the tip of the iceberg, levy fans. Alright? The very teeny tiny tip. Next, we're going to look at the level 3 Resisting Fate levy. Discard a card from your hand in the waiting room. When Wings of Freedom is placed in your climax zone, if this is in the front row, you may pay the cost. If so, choose 1 core character in your clock and put it in any slot on the stage. So let's talk about this for a second. You discard a card, okay. It heals you, okay. Whenever you play the climax, so potentially up to 4 times before you have to deck refresh, alright, not only does it get healed, but it becomes targets on the... Oh my gosh, I can't even. It heals and then becomes more firepower. This card is awesome. So I would already, just based on that effect alone, argue that this is the best level 3 that came out of Attack on Titan. I know some people would differ, but this is probably my favorite level 3 that came out of Attack on Titan. And we're not even done. Alright, you can pay 3 stock, discard a core character from your hand, and you can take one of your characters on the stage and kill it off, and you can take this card, untap it, move it to the spot where your character that you discarded from the stage was standing, and it can attack twice per turn, pretty much. So let's play through that again, alright? You attack with this, you reverse a character. After you reverse the character, you can pay 3 stock, you can discard a card from your hand, discard one of your characters on the stage, freeing up a slot, and then move Levy to that spot, stand him back up, and attack again. It can only be done once per turn, but that's really all you need. It would be really broken if you keep doing it over and over again. Holy cow. And you don't even have to do it like that if you don't want to. Like, let's say Levy is your only front row character, and you've got some characters in the back that you don't really need. You can attack with Levy, reverse a character, get your damage off, then discard one of your back row characters, discard a card from your hand, pay your stock, move it to a different open spot, and either reverse another character, or just straight up attack directly for some soul damage. Nothing is bad about this card. Nothing. It's all around good with, like, no downsides. Granted, it can't get quite as big in numbers as some other cards, but if you can figure out a way around that problem, then this is just an amazing card that I could see building a deck around. Alrighty guys, the grand finale. The one Levy to rule them all. We have Mankind's Strongest Soldier Levy, and never a more apt name has there ever been for a card. This card's a little wordy, so I'll put it in the simplest terms I can. First of all, if you have this card in the front row center slot, it goes up to 7,500, which, one for 7,500 is pretty decent. It's obviously hindered by the fact that it's only the one in the center slot, so you can't, like, put 3 of these out or something and have all of them be as powerful. But let's get on to its second effect. You can discard a card from your hand, and you can discard one character from the stage, and when you put this card's climax in play and you pay its cost, you can take, and the following, all of the cards listed, or not even all of them if you don't want all of them. But there are 4 different character cards here that you can get off of this effect, and the great thing is, you could discard them from your hand or stage to get this effect off. Let's say, hypothetically, you happen to have a Petra and an Oruo one in your stage and one in your hand. You can get rid of one of the ones in your hand, one of the ones off of the stage, and then they just come right back on the stage. It's a win-win situation. Now, I'm not going to show you all 4 of the cards that this card brings to the table, quite literally, but they are pretty effing good. All of them give Levy some kind of special effect, and also get some kind of special effect if you have more members of the squad in play. Let me just put it this way. If you can get this full effect off, get Levy out there with all 4 of his team members, Levy is an 11,500 with Super Encore on level 1. Levy's got a big booty. Honestly, I don't even really know what to say about it. Like, even if you don't pull all of it off, this card is ridiculously good just for the field presence that it gives you and for the boosts of whatever cards you can happen to get. This by itself could be a win condition. Granted, your other characters aren't as powerful, and this sort of deals with the fact that it can only be your center row slot, so your opponent can play around it. But the fact that you're forcing your opponent to play around something like this is just unimaginably good. Your opponent can just throw trash out in the middle so that they can kind of render all of your power bonuses useless, but if you've got your opponent to that point where they just have to throw trash in front of you because they don't have a way to deal with you, then you're good. It's one card that's generating stock every single turn, and it's destroying a character every turn or just attacking for straight soul damage every turn. I just think this is a really cool strategy. Like I said before, I'm not going to look at each individual card that this card brings to the field, but if I do end up doing a part 2 to this, I'll look at them then. So just for right now, take a look at this, soak it in, and Levy fangirls, your deck has arrived. We finally get onto blue, which are the actual Titans. There's not really a whole lot to look at here in blue, unfortunately. I think I ground up pretty much everything that the set has to offer when it comes to blue, but we're going to look at the 4 cards that I found interesting nonetheless. The first one we have is Preying Upon Titan, which is really the only level 0 that you have and or need. You can have as many copies of this card in your deck as you want, and the really neato thing about it is there are 3 different variations of the card. I chose this one to display because it's my favorite looking one, just because of the look on his face and the way his hands are positioned. He looks pretty smug, pretty full of himself, so it's the one I'm showing off. But you could potentially have like 4 of each one or 5 of each one if you really want your deck to look nice. It's only a 1,000, but for each of your other Preying Upon Titans you have in the front row, it gets plus 2,000 power. So if you're doing the just really Zerg rushy cheesy strategy and running 15 Preying Upon Titans and you happen to put 3 of them on the field, it's just a full row of 5,000s that your opponent has to deal with. This is probably the first time in Weiss history that I will very seriously state that a deck has level 0 win potential. Obviously, you're not going to win on level 0, but you're pretty good on level 0, okay? You're going to be generating your stock, and you're going to be playing just fine. Your opponent wants to suicide into these, oh well, you'll just have to play another one from your hand, and everything will be lovely once again. The one thing that kind of bothers me is the fact that the deck doesn't really have any back rows for you to play in blue, so you'll have to figure out a way around that, but this is good enough on its own. There's also sort of a level 1 version of this. The level 1 is actually really bad, probably to counteract the fact that the level 0 is so effing good. I'm not going to look at it here, but I might look at it in the part 2 if we end up doing the part 2. Next, we're going to start looking at the female Titans. I'm going to avoid using her name just in case you haven't watched the show yet and you don't want to be spoiled. This one is the level 2. All of your other Titan characters gain plus 1,000 power, so it's a really good back row character. If you have 2 of these in the back row, all of your Titans go up by 2,000. When you play a climax, just any climax, doesn't matter which one it is, you can pay 3 stock and discard 2 cards from your hand to the waiting room, and you can straight deal 5 damage to your opponent. Timed correctly, this is a guaranteed level up, so yeah, I really like little effects like this. Some people don't like them because they're too risky, but either you get rid of a climax or you deal 5 damage to your opponent and almost guarantee a level up. I think if played smartly, this is one of the most devastating effects that you can do. And its final effect is you can rest this and choose one of your titans and give it plus 1000 power for the turn. So not only is it getting the 1000 power from its first effect, but you can take one titan and boost it by 2000 instead of 1000. And the great thing about this is you don't have to rest to use that second effect. So there's nothing stopping you from just boosting a character by 1000 every turn and then still dealing the 5 damage with its effect if you so choose. We'll also look at the level 3 female titan, Capture Operation. First of all, the character opposite of this gets -1 soul, which is pretty good. If your opponent is just straight up using level 0s to try to knock you out, then you negate their soul damage, so your opponent has to figure out something else, start wasting some climaxes, so on and so forth. If you attack while subjugation is in your climax zone and all of your characters are titans, you can draw a card and your opponent gets another -1 soul for the character in front of this card. So that means when your opponent attacks with like a level 0 or level 1 on their next turn, even if they were to trigger a card that gives them +1 soul, it would still be 0 damage. Overall, a really good effect. And finally, you can discard a Titan card from your hands to the discard pile when this is front attacked to give this another 2500 power. I'm pretty sure you can only do this once. I don't think you can just continuously discard cards to keep giving this 2500 power. If I find out that that is the ruling, then I'll probably put an annotation up somewhere or something, because that would make this card really powerful. But, you know, just being able to turn any card in your hand into a free 2500 backup is really good. So there you go. A full set of 3 of these in the front row is going to be nearly impossible to touch, especially if you happen to play Subjugation and all of them are giving your opponents -2 soul damage. That is just bad times. Okay, so this very last bit is the bit that I was really excited to get to. This is going to be the very last card that we look at today, or cards, I guess, if you want to be specific. But before we talk about this card, I want to say something. One thing that I really respect about Bushiroad is the fact that they actually managed to get some of the characters, like, perfect. They do something with a character that emulates exactly what we want the character to be, and I think they did a fantastic job with Colossal Titan. I was a little worried about what they were going to do with something like Colossal Titan to actually make it feel big. And their solution to this was to make the Colossal Titan 3 different cards. The Colossal Titan is really good, but he's so good that you have to get all 3 pieces of him, and he takes up your entire front row. I just want to applaud Bushiroad really quickly for doing something like that, for something like the Colossal Titan, just to give the game a little more flavor and a little more meaning. Getting on to the actual cards, talking about all 3 of them at once is going to be a little messy, so I'll do my best and I'll start with the card on the left. First of all, one problem with the 2 cards without the card in the middle is that they cannot attack if you don't have Giant Body Colossal Titan in play. And this is another really cool thing too. Like, if you happen to play the 2 cards that aren't the body, then it's almost like you can sort of see parts of the Titan, but it hasn't actually appeared yet, and then you play the middle, boom, the Titan has appeared, and you can start messing stuff up. So if you're playing the cards in the correct order, and this is on the left, then the Giant Body and the Breached Walls get plus 1000 power each, which is pretty good. Its third effect is when you play its Climax, then you can discard a card from your hand, and all of your Titans get another 3500 power, so they just get obnoxiously powerful at this point. Which honestly is how it should be. Its final effect is if your opponent manages to get rid of Giant Body Colossal Titan and this is in play, you have to discard it, okay? If the body of the Titan goes down, then all of the Titan goes down. It's not just one piece. This is another thing that I think is just really cool. Next, we'll look at the card on the right, Breached Walls. This kind of messes up the picture a little bit. As you can see, the left and the middle sort of match up. I don't have it exactly perfect, but you can at least see that they are supposed to be one picture. This is just a shot from behind. I think I see what they were going for here, where you can kind of see the exact size and enormousness of the Titan from behind, and they didn't want to just do another hand, I guess. I think it would look a little cooler, but I digress. Its second effect is the same as the second effect for the Threat to Mankind. If you have this on the right where it's supposed to be, then your Threat to Mankind gets plus 1000 power, and your Giant Body gets another 1000 power, going up to 12,000 natural. If you attack while this card's Climax is in play, which is the same Climax, of course, Then you get to draw a card, which isn't quite as flashy as giving everything plus 3,500, but hey, the card you have to discard for the 850 years effect for the left has to come from somewhere, so you just attack with this first, and you get yourself a card, and then you discard that card to give all of your Titan pieces plus 3,500 power. And finally, if the middle goes down, then the entire thing goes down because it's all one Titan. Now let's look at the big guy himself, the giant body colossal Titan. First of all, if you happen to have the left and the right pieces out already, then this becomes a level 2. Wowzers, that is pretty messed up. We already see that if the other two pieces come out, it's a natural 12,000, so it's just like, boom, 12,000 level 2, no big deal. Doesn't even cost that much to pull all this off, it's just 4 stock to get all 3 pieces out. Its second effect is another thing that adds to the flavor. If you have the colossal Titan out there, at least the giant body, and the giant body has not yet been reversed, then the other two pieces cannot be reversed. So if your opponent wants to start tackling this thing at all, they have to start with the middle, and if they can't figure out a way to get around colossal Titan giant body, then they're not allowed to attack his arm or his butt either. And for its final effect, obviously this is going to have a climax combo with then 850 years as well. If you happen to have it in play, then you can send it straight to the discard pile, and if you do, you heal 1 from the clock by putting it in your hand. You draw 1 from the clock, increasing hand advantage, not going to waiting room, clogging up your waiting room with more non-climaxes, and this gets plus 3,000 power till the end of your opponent's turn. Wowzers. This goes up to 15,000, which just makes it just even more unfortunate for your opponent to have to deal with in order to get over this so that they can even start attempting to get rid of your right and left pieces. People may be a little confused about why you have to send the climax to the discard pile, why they would add something like that. I don't really have an answer for you. I think it might have something to do with maybe guaranteeing that it gets in your discard piles for when you deck refresh, but I don't know exactly, so don't quote me on it. But overall, like, this just entire set of 3 cards is amazing, and I want to see a deck with this do well in a big tournament. Just because I think it would be really cool to see somebody pull off the Colossal Titan and actually have it be as big as they tried to make it out to be. People were going nuts for that 10,000 Colossal Titan that just happens to become a 15,000 during your opponent's turn. This pretty much kicks the crap out of that one. This is what I wanted from the Colossal Titan. The other one might as well not exist to me. Have I really been rambling for almost 40 minutes? Holy crap. Yeah, this is a Kudo video, alright. So let's talk about the set. This set has truly impressed me. This is probably, I would argue, might actually be my favorite set that's come out in English. There's still some huge contenders in Japanese, like I'm obviously a huge Haruhi fanboy, so maybe not better than like Haruhi, and I'm sure if I had more time I could think of some other stuff. I don't think that this is maybe the most powerful set, at least in Japanese. I think it's a huge contender in English, but it's not necessarily the most powerful set, but it is probably the best made set, I would argue. Just everything about it's perfect. All of the really powerful stuff has some kind of setup, some kind of drawback to make it so that really experienced players can get some kind of satisfaction from pulling it off. It's sort of a separation of people who are really good at the game or people who want to get really good at the game, and people who just net deck. Like, people who actually know the set and actually put their heart and soul into playing it are going to know more than people who just net deck. Sorry, I don't want to put down net decking or anything. Net decking is a very important part of the game, and I very much encourage you guys to use any of the decks that I make and show to you, but what I'm saying is there should be some kind of reward for going out there and really working hard at mastering a set. I believe that this set has that for them. I think that if you want to make Attack on Titan your main set, you've chosen a very great set to do it with, and there are many strategies out there. I want to see some Aaron Titan decks, I want to see some Colossal Titan stall decks, I want to see some Levy level 1 decks, I want to see it all, because this set is definitely capable of it. That's pretty much all I have to say, guys. I'm sorry that there's not really much more for this end bit, but I've already talked for 40 minutes. What else do you want from me, honestly? So, obviously, leave this video a like if you enjoyed it. Those things really do help us out. Leave me your thoughts on the set in the comments section below. And finally, subscribe to stay up to date on the latest Kudo news. If you happen to want to see a part 2 to this, remember that that like is important because it lets me know that you really want to see it. And once we hit those 100 likes, then the second part will be up as soon as I can get around to it. Hopefully it won't be another 2 months before you see me, and I'll see you guys next time.